Greetings guys, it's Japanese Gary Ben, and I'm not dead, and I have not stopped either. Um, this is the second, and what probably shouldn't have been the second, of what is my video diary of the method and progress of how I'm learning Japanese using mostly methods people would call AJATT or MIA, taking parts of both of them as it goes along. In general, this refers to learning language through immersion, and whether or not you focus on those methods specifically, I would like to recommend and use this diary series to promote learning language through immersion, because I think it's a really not often used tool, and I really think it is the best. If you want to know more about what it is I actually do to learn and why I do it, I would half recommend watching my previous video diary. I say half recommend because it does spend a decent amount of time covering exactly what I do, and it probably has the best explanation even now of what I currently believe about language learning. However, I half wouldn't recommend it because it is a Lord of the Rings film. However, the first half is more for people wanting to know about the method I use. They refer it to as AJAT, and that's AJAT, which is all Japanese all the time, and that is pretty accurate. So you can make sure to look into that, and several resources that I've put there if you want to look more into it. Other than that, the latter half is mostly for people who are doing that method now, or people who have decided they're going to do that method, but maybe want some more information or some more views from someone who's done it, aka doing it, / doing it, or aka doing it. So with that out of the way, I'll go on to the core of this video, which will cover a few things. First, I'd like to specifically cover why this video hasn't been made previously, as some people would mostly guess from my aims in originally doing that method for 18 months that I would have made an 18-month video, and this was the plan. However, near the end of that frame of time, I knew that I would have to start getting a part-time job, and basically since the end of last year, that's what I've been trying to do, and so I bring you this video today as of Saturday, the 30th of March 2019, that's when this is recorded, regardless of when it's going up, where if I finally had the first day of a part-time permanent job. So hooray for everyone that likes to post that indeed, it's because I have a lot of free time, I don't have a job that I got so far. That is true, I do think time indeed matters, and I can't avoid that. But I don't really think that's a criticism of the method, and I don't think other methods get better just because you had better time. Although, if you did have 2 years of full-time learning, well, close to 2 years, it's around 21 months now of full-time learning, you would probably realise that you'd ran out of textbooks if you were doing some other method, I think. So that would at least force you to do something else, probably. And not become like a few examples of people who have been learning Japanese for about 7 years and just aren't where they want to be. So, and also before I go on, I'd like to discuss certain thoughts about the previous video. Of course, it was ridiculous that it was that big, but that's because I had so much to say at that point in time, and I could have broken it into a few different, like at least 3 videos, but maybe that would have made it hard to sell people. I am grateful for the amount of views, though, and the amount of feedback. The feedback has been lovely. If anything, what I'd like to ask in the future of people who support me is to just try not to be too down on other people in the comments. I know people are excited and want to support me and believe in the same sort of things I do, but I don't want them to just get too stingy to other people. Like, there's a few examples of people go like, but how good are you exactly? Describe this to me, and some people cut in with like, well, it's definitely good, better than anyone that's using textbooks, that's for sure. Like, I do believe that, but at the same time, that's just this a bit needless. I mean, I'm not saying don't support, just try not to be a bit crass or anything. On that, I I want to thank anyone that actually went through that entire video, regardless of whether or not it took you away from your studies. Thank you so much for giving so much of your time to that previous video. I cannot believe, I'm not going to at all believe that, like, even a fraction of the, say, 4,000 views, is it now, of those people actually watched the whole thing. I do believe quite a lot of those views might be because my video actually got posted on Reddit on a discussion that I actually did see. The main point that I thought was unfortunate about that, apart from the fact that the guy who posted my video was downvoted, the unfortunate part of that is using to push a point about my ability for a good accent, which I will discuss more in this video, what I feel about that at this current point, because it was one of the main points of the things I did wrong with how I was going forward in learning. But he also didn't quite say what I was saying. He said that I was saying that it ruined my accent. More... I want to say a Japanese phrase. Being more specific, what actually I said was that I can't actually know. I can tell there's maybe not where I want to be, but that might just be that I haven't progressed enough. But I did feel that some things could have been better, and I was more worried that I couldn't tell as it went on into the future, and so I will probably only know in the long run. But I can tell you, for both good and bad factors that I'll go into in this video diary, hopefully it won't be 3 hours this time. If you actually like my videos, maybe that's good. Both good and bad factors. I'm quite embarrassed about my speaking voice, and you'll see why. Not necessarily because you think it's bad, but the reasons both good and bad for that, and you might be surprised by the good and bad, but you'll see. Other than that, I'd like to also put forward that I did speak quite a bit about lazy kanji being the bad way to do Heisig, because that was the community thought at the time. The community has, however, changed about this, and that's why I'd really recommend not using me as your sole source. I'm quite embarrassed. I mean, I still recommend not doing lazy kanji, but I mean personally, but Matt has now changed his mind about the benefits of it, because there has been a lot of talk about people just some not being able to get into Japanese because they hate doing Heisig so much, and they think they'd have more fun doing real Japanese, but it's kind of a crutch that isn't necessarily perfect. But I do think that it is the best way to learn kanji. There may be annoying things about it, but I do think it's the best way to learn kanji, and I'll discuss more about the kind of discussions people had about that later, because in this video I'm going to discuss where I am now, where I'm going, how my approach has changed, how I've progressed in things, how I've been tackling new things, my focuses for the future, as well as some community stuff and some interesting experiences I've had, both online and in real life, learning Japanese since the last time I saw you. So apart from that, the one thing I like to put out of the way, because I know people probably be asking a few things about this, the first thing I'll put out is I have not passed 10,000 sentences like I originally planned, and I thought that I really could in those 18 months, and I think I could have if I was still doing my previous method that involved like bulldozing books, just Japanese novels and things, because that's a far better way to get vocabulary. But since I want to focus more on leveling up listening wise and making sure my words were kind of to a decent level, rather than just understanding, I've been focusing on that for a while, but I've gotten better in how I feel about it, but still not the best in terms of motivation. I'd have rocky bits. So I would like to say, for the first thing, is the amount of sentence cards I do have right now is actually, I believe it's just under 8,000 in a really silly way. I'll demonstrate. Actually, I'll take a picture for you right now. I'll put this near the camera so you can see that this is definitely the... you cannot see that very well at all. It is definitely the 30th of the... It is definitely the 30th of... There you go, the 30th of March. So you can be sure when this video is going up. Well, when this video is made, sorry. And I will take a picture from my Anki right now of exactly what it says. I haven't actually done my reviews today, which is very bad of me, but I have been working today for the first time, so you guys who have been working this whole time, the real heroes, can get down on me for being like, yeah, now you know how hard it is. I can't do it in the morning. Right, yeah, you can see that? That's 7999. There we go, it's perfect. Right? There you go. Right. And this doesn't bother me. Being at that level doesn't bother me, because the sentence deck is, after all, a number. It's what I'm aiming for as a rough estimate, and I will consider, like, if I'm at 10,000, I will have kind of officially graduated. There are a few reasons for why I think that I won't necessarily need to go hardcore in the future. Hardcore right now is mostly for what I'm going to be talking about in a minute, which is, I think, more for pitch accent. For understanding, I probably won't even need to be continue doing hardcore in the future, but I will try to keep up as much Japanese time as possible. I am indeed trying to do as much as possible in Japanese, even though naturally with work I will have it, limited compared to how it was before. I forgot what I was going to go into next, but the thing I'd like to bring up here is my level of comprehension. Maybe that I'm begging too easily for the 8K bit. My level of comprehension thing is about 80%. Like, it just plain up is I've gone past the point where I stop caring if I don't understand things. And we don't think that, and it's not because there's lots of things I don't understand. Because if I hear something, I go, oh, I don't know that word. I stop caring because that means that I probably haven't heard it before very much. That's really the case to me. I suffer no level of, I really need to learn this, which is in some cases is a bad thing, because it may mean that I stop caring so much. But despite what I'm going to say later about how well I was at certain points when I discussed things with community arguments, it's actually quite rare for me to take new sentences today, just because of the way my method now leans towards doing a lot of listening and then trying to put reading at the end of the day. The trouble with that is, as a person with ADHD, it means I have to find that many more times of motivation to read a book. If I read it all together, I can do it in 3 days, but last year when I was reading novels, it took me a month to read one novel, because that's that many more times I had to find the motivation at the end of the day to read it after I've made sure I've done a decent amount of listening. So I just, tons of days are just like, no, I can't be bothered. I will have to put the sentences in my deck afterwards. So it has become quite common for me to actually have many days where I just don't put in new sentences, and that's become a norm to me. It had been such a long time where I didn't fail to put in new sentences, but I just don't very much now, to the point that I don't really worry too much about backing up my deck. I still do it, but I don't do it so often, because I'm not too worried about... I mean, it's still losing study on other things, but it just doesn't clutch me so much now that I have more of a appreciation for my own ability rather than just relying on Anki. I have actually got to the first kind of point lately where my kanji, that people have problems with, that I've, earlier ones I'm now screwing up again. I mean, it's kind of scary because I haven't transferred it to, say, Japanese words, because I'm worried about how that will screw up my thought pattern determine it, but that might be easy to remember now, certainly. Having to use English words now might just be a problem. But it is mostly things that I haven't touched in, a while. I'm not at 2 years. When some people ask me, I've technically been learning Japanese since 2 years ago. I'm getting towards 2 years in AJATT, technically, even though some of the time hasn't been great lately. But it's about 21 months at this point. One thing I wanted to mention that I forgot, that I'm now going to mention, is Kat, when he first did the 18 months and considered himself fluent, he got around 7.5k cards. He just put it up to 10,000 because it sounded better. There's a few points I want to bring up to this. I passed 7.5k in September of last year, and yet it is March now, and I have only just about to break 8,000. It hurts no one more than me to say that. That is such a slow level of progress in terms of new cards. Even considering that I was buckling down to 15 a day is a good maximum, but once I changed methods, even getting 15 a day became just really unlikely. especially when it came to, I haven't seen this enough to really want this word, so it doesn't matter. When it comes to fluency, though, I definitely relate to how Brit vs. Japan felt in his 18-month video. I mean, I could technically say really simple things probably quite well. Not very instinctively, but I could say them quite well. Unlike him, though, I haven't passed 10k, so I can't say I can just read everything, but the vast majority of things I can, and the things that I can't, it doesn't really bother me. If anything, it's either that word doesn't matter to me, or, oh, finally that word. It's about that level of interaction, really. If anything, I feel kind of... Japanese word for, shame and defeat, that adjective. Because there was a guy around the time that I passed 7.5 who had started about the same time as me, who was in Matt's Discord, who was at 8k, and I was like, Jesus, man, how are you doing this? Good job. And he's probably past 10k by now, whereas I have only just got up to his level of cards. But so the number of cards is what I tell myself as I try to sleep at night. But also, Brit vs. Japan decided from his newer videos that he's not really concerned about learning intonation, i.e. pitch, accent. He's kind of fine with the level he's at right now for talking. Whereas part of the reason that I feel worse and don't really want to talk is because my now greater understanding of pitch, accent leads me going, that's just wrong. Even if I don't know perfectly why that's wrong, it's wrong because, well, if I don't actually know it, then I can't expect myself to be doing it correctly, is basically what I can tell you. For one thing, I know that one thing bothers me is, like, maybe it's just trying to avoid embarrassment, but if I try to speak Japanese, my voice doesn't get higher, like apparently it should, when people that speak both English and Japanese switch to Japanese. Tendency is apparently for the voice to go higher, according to Dogen. But my voice gets deeper, and I think that's just because I'm trying to avoid embarrassment. But I think it's just putting on things accidentally. So, fluent. It's not that I'm fluent, at least by my own accord, from speaking at least. I feel that tons of people watching will want to strangle me with the rope I just gave them there, like, oh, AJATT's bullshit, or like, oh, you're really terrible. But I could say that it's my own definition. Like, I'm constantly not where I want to be, because where I want to be is native like perfection. But I'm not very good at like immediately spilling out, and I think that's just because my listening time is not super great and consistent. I mean, it's really good compared to a lot of people, but I mean, like, the balance of reading and listening was not always great. But I just get things now. Like, most things I just get without having to do anything, like, not really any thinking. But my level of Japanese fluency is, like, I can monologue in Japanese in my head. It helps if it's a response to something that was in Japanese. But it's the same thing like in English, where my train of thought is far more fluid in my head, but once I try to get it out in words, it just kind of stops. But no, I'm really proud of where I am right now. If anything, I might try to get a Japanese conversational partner, not because I think it would help, but for one, it might get me over my embarrassment of actually speaking Japanese. And two, I'm actually at the point where I kind of just want Japanese friends. Because for one thing, if some people think, one thing that people might say is like, oh, you can't really get good at Japanese from watching anime. But like, to be fair, one problem I do have is that I'm not being realistic about my use of Japanese. I mean, if anything, I'll discuss it later, but like, I probably want to be more crude than is really appropriate, and then once I get that slap in the face from reality of people just like, dombiki at me, I'll just be like, alright, yeah, I can't beat that guy. I've got to be better at being a Japanese person than this, not just be good at Japanese. So I think that I need that to just slap me in the face. So that's about where I am now. I'm pretty happy. I mean, it's not the same as Brit vs. Japan, where it's like, oh, I can read everything. But like, I try to do what I can. My focus on the future, I'd like to discuss this next. I might get to some fun things. I'm going to discuss a pitch accent after this, so don't worry. Get some nice, juicy stuff about some things that are a bit hard, some things that were surprisingly easier than I thought, actually. So, I thought future. so I'm still, as you know, if you watch my previous video, if you could remember, that I'm kind of aiming for the JET program, and that hasn't changed. The thing that made it a bit awkward was that you can only apply for JET at like the end of the year, and so the time I came around 18 months was actually about the time I should have applied if I wanted to be there this year, which gives me just more time to study Japanese before I ultimately need to be there, because now the earliest time I can apply to it is the end of this year, and then that would mean I'd be there like summer of next year. So that's currently kind of where I'm aiming at right now, which gives me decent time to focus on pitch accent and to earn some money on the way there. Other than that, I've thought, like, from watching some Japanese videos of people doing things and earning money, I thought I'd pick up, like, maybe as a combination with Japanese freelance web-based programming would be where I head in the future after I have a programming background. I just haven't used it at all, and found that it may be just because the amount of Japanese programming professionals is really low. For one thing, when you're for Japanese, it's hard enough dealing with error messages on the screen, stressful enough with error message on the screen saying this isn't working for something you've written in English. But imagine being a Japanese person having to do that for a language they do not understand. It's super stressful. So I think that not a lot of people get there, and also the people that get like good at this would like to say that you don't need to be a sciencey person. You can be an artsy person. This is terms that you'll understand if you knew those words in Japanese. And the reason why that is because web-based programming, I mean, lots of programmers probably wouldn't consider it real programming, because after all, it's markup language. It's basically just actually knowing about all those details that went into teenagers' edgy blogs 10 years ago, about adding all the colours and things. It's just that for making web pages. There's no functions or anything. You don't have to do any calculations. It's just typing in how it's going to look and doing that. So that's, of course, why that could be accessible. That's probably the most accessible programming. So I thought I'd pick that up as a light thing to do and study and work into that, because you can make a really, really decent amount of money, to the point when I've started to just kind of wanted to do what those sorts of people are doing, where they're nomadic freelance workers. Like, I could probably just go from Japan to anywhere in the world and still do work, because it would all be remote on a computer, just doing freelance work, creating websites for people, because there are no shortage of people that need websites, but there are a shortage of people that can make them, even though all the people that make them that probably think it's really simple. But one of the things that people go through is like going, oh, you don't have to be a science guy to do it, and like the point I think there is like that's a really actually easy way to get in, because it's not very sciencey at all. That is very true, but depending on certain people being snobby, they might say that's not really programming. But then you get into some more programming. So I've thought of doing that recently. In fact, like, I bought a book. Like, this is, I mean, it's not very difficult to like actually really understand this. This is what I'm reading. Yeah, you understand that. It's a book on HTML and CSS3. So it's nice to do some programming again. I've been learning that type of Japanese. Tell by this. This is 300 pages, and I'm nowhere near through it. But I've covered most of what this covers on like places you can learn on the web in Japanese for videos. So that's been like, even then, learning is still immersion, just for programming. So lead into future stuff like that. As an interesting point, it's barely related. I mean, I might do that to earn money. If I could do that before, like, hopefully end up in the JET program next year, I can earn some money before I go there. Because likely, when I get there, I won't be able to do that freelance work because it won't be covered under my visa, even though it won't technically require being in the country to do. But yes, it will involve Japanese clients primarily, which would be a good way to seize the market as someone who natively speaks English, and also for a market that apparently just has a high demand for programmers. They probably have a high demand here, but I often hear like programmers are overstocked or something, like, and not enough people can get in the door, which I kind of think is also weird, considering that even here there's going to be a high demand for programming anything, really. And what I've discovered from those freelance sites is it certainly is occasional at the time that somebody with money will think of an idea and they don't actually have the skills to make it, and they have to hire the people that actually have the skills. So, you can just make $1,000 off of making one website for a person that's nothing but really how it looks, not any backside functions, just how it looks, because people can't do that. And like, if I did that 10 times a year, I would just wouldn't have to do anything else. Like, isn't that sick? If I do more than that, then I'd be good. And like, even the people that aren't good at programming and aren't sciencey, if they do like a year of decent practice at that part time, then they become able to create one of those websites in like 2 hours, because it's basically doing the same work over and over again. So just like, oh, I've taken like 20 hours out of my life to do some work for some Japanese people, and now I do not have to work for the rest of the year. So that seems like a good source for the future, doesn't it? Makes it far easier to study. If I get a handle on that, you just don't need to do any other part-time work forever and go straight to, I make good, profitable results. I don't need to work part-time. I hope my boss does not find this video and go, oh, you don't need to work part-time? Get out. But that's kind of what the area I'm going to be focusing on in the future, doing things. It's an interesting point as an off-ramp for real-life experiences that happened to me. During my search for jobs, I'm not very good at, which is part of the reason why I started AJATT in the first place, you'll know. I went to see a guy that helps people do jobs, find jobs. He said that like I had great prospects, it was still hard finding jobs. But what was really funny, and I bet everyone will find this absolutely hilarious, he just turned out to be someone that went to university for learning Japanese and has previously been on the JET program. Like, oh man, what kind of odd twist of fate is this? And I'm going to talk about some funny things. It's not that I want to dunk on him, because I was probably too arrogant in speaking to him. Like, really, I'm just bad at getting things across subtly, and I have to directly combat with someone that's basically going, no, to everything I'm saying. I mean, it wasn't that harsh, but it was kind of like a level of, well, I feel this way. Like going, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, no, I think it does. And then just boiling down to, oh, well, let's be gentle and like, it's just opinions, man. It's just like, that doesn't, why argue at all? I mean, there's not really a point that I need to have an argument, but I just end up going like, I believe this. I don't believe in classroom learning, and that's got to be such a diss to that guy. But what's interesting about him is like, for example, I'm so not nice to classroom learners. Well, he's like in his 40s, so he did his degree 20 years ago, and going to Japan was like part of the 4th year of his degree, and he also did like, it also involved like Japanese history and things. But what may be surprising to people to learn is that, as an example, when he got to Japan doing the JET program, he filled out where he needed to live and his driving insurance and everything in Japanese before they even started to help him. So he was that competent. He is that competent of a person. And, but I did talk about some things that just don't believe. He thought my method was weird, and he never heard of it. He also hadn't heard of pitch accent, which is not really surprising. I mean, it's not that I want to go, oh, this is a real hard thing, this is what you really need to get, but like, I do think if you really care about learning well, it does kind of matter. I mean, intonation in any language, I think, probably really matters. Like, even English, like, just because I'm not thinking about it, English intonation does matter, otherwise it sounds like giving a weird amount of emphasis to the wrong part of the sentence, that sort of thing. But like, if I just mentioned pitch accent, it's like, oh, like this. I was like, and he just immediately go like, oh, that doesn't matter. I've never heard of that. It's like, no, but I think Japanese people care. Like, there's examples of Japanese, like, I've seen videos, like, live examples where on variety shows someone gets a word wrong and immediately everyone else says, like, that makes fun of them. It's like, well, you don't have to take variety shows so seriously. Like, they're jokes. Like, he just doesn't quite get it. It's getting too caught up in my examples rather than the point. Like, you can go into any, well, not any YouTube video. There's quite a lot of YouTube videos where it's just someone talking, like even a virtual YouTuber, and some people just take the piss by like putting curved arrows that indicate their intonation on a word being wrong. We're putting it next to the word. Just be like getting the intonation wrong. Like, so his opinion is the Japanese people do not care about this, and one of his defenses was like, no one. Like, even people who get really good, like, I know a person who has the Japanese wife and she's really good at English, but there's still a little bit of an accent. It's like, yeah, I mean, I could get that. But literally what I said to him was basically just like, yeah, but I want to be better than that. I mean, that can't not be an arrogant thing to say, but I said I wanted to be better than that. And he's just like, well, nobody gets that good. And I was like, well, maybe it's because the method is wrong. I mean, I am just like that. That's how much of a straight, crushing answer I just give in response. Like, one of the things brought up is I was like, I said I didn't believe in classroom learning. It's like, what if my course was hard? It's just like, there might be a few people watching this that follow me on Twitter, even though my Twitter isn't actually currently related to this, and I will plan to make a new Twitter in the future related to this when I do more things in the future, because I am planning to, and I will go into that. But I just rant on Twitter about these sort of things. And one of the things I kind of bring up is my analogy of language learning being like beating a rock with your hands because you want to learn how to break rocks, and people are doing it for so many years, and someone like me who just starting to go like, why don't you just use a pickaxe instead? And they're just like, you don't understand. I'm a professional at doing this. I've been doing this all my time. That will never work. So I'm going to continue punching it with my fist. Like, the fact that his course was hard has nothing to do with how good it is. Because after all, if you're using the wrong tools, of course something's going to be hard. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it was the best thing to do. But I just couldn't get this across to him. Just because it's hard doesn't mean that it was the best thing to do, and also doesn't mean it was necessarily working towards your goal. And I put across very clearly, I mean, maybe not clearly, but as a single point, like, I don't believe he's good because of his course. I believe he's good because he honestly cared about interacting with Japanese as much as possible. And whereas other people today don't. But the thing is, he's giving his course all his credit. And that's wrong. The reason why I got good is because he interacted with language, I wasn't afraid to do that, and got more immersion than anyone else did. I mean, apparently he only got a 2-2 in his course. But, like, he's that good. It doesn't matter what the course grade was. Because he was actually good. And it's really kind of shattering to see, because it's like, and that's why, I think courses matter. Like, no! You did that because you wanted to interact Japanese. And that's an interesting point, because he learned Japanese like that 20 years ago. He's pretty rusty now, by his own admission. And he probably was, to some level, fluent. Like, he could communicate without having to think about translating from English. And, we discussed how having to translate from English is a bad sign in terms of fluency. But then it's not about the classroom learning, it is about the immersion bit that was really useful, and just couldn't get that across. I'm just catching my breath while I think about what I actually want to go at this point. Blah blah blah. Blah 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 blah. But anyway, he's gonna. Since he actually fixed my CV and helped me, because he's a nice guy, even though I gave a bad impression because I just came a bit too, honestly judgmental. I didn't want to, I wasn't that I was pushing him down, but I wanted to get across why I think my thing's important, but it's kind of relevant to the conversation, so if anything, it's entirely my fault. The thing I wanted to get to is the difference in generations. Like, he did that 20 years ago, so the amount of resources would be way lower. So any chance to interact with Japanese would have been that much more impactful. And so, of course, he would have ran into it. Whereas, inversely, people today, they're overflowing with things that they can interact with, and indeed things they want to interact with, but they want to interact perfectly with the thing they love, or that they're afraid of not understanding anything. And that's the wrong mindset, and that is oddly how today, despite having so many more resources, those people are accomplishing less than the people from 20 years ago, despite the fact that those people probably had to go to Japan to have that many resources. And that was really interesting to see. So I think he's a pretty good learner of Japanese. And if I don't... I'm doing it again. I'm doing the... I think it's really good to learn Japanese. Even if it's not going to be as good as I'm going to be. Yeah. No, I it's not that I don't understand when people watch these sort of videos and go like, why is this guy such a git? Like I did get someone call me the C word in the comments of the last video, and all I could really respond to, because it was such a I know about Japanese people in such a outsider sort of way. It's like, well, you guys don't get it. The Japanese people are all about modesty. If I was being really cynical about how I actually believe about Japanese culture now, I would not be saying Japanese people believe in honesty. Japanese people believe in everyone knowing their place, is my opinion. To the point where if someone is out of their place, they think that that person is giving them permission to be hated, is my now dark, cynical attitude towards the worst parts of what I see of Japanese culture. That's not to say I would hate Japan. I mean, I do definitely agree that anyone that's kind of like up here about Japan being great, it's probably because they're not actually that good at interacting with it. After all, I've seen some of the worst things about Japan. Like, I've watched live when Japanese people were being warned about an upcoming snowstorm and how you shouldn't go outside on that day because you won't get home. And saying not to go outside unless it's an absolute necessity. And the Twitter was just full of people being, like, saying they were being told by the bosses, well, work's a necessity. Well, school's a necessity. See you Monday. Like, just that. And of course they ended up, at lunchtime, sending all those people home on the train, thus jamming the trains, when shit, as expected, sorry, I should have put a swearing warning in this video, I'm going to say it now, shit hit the fan as expected, as the country warned. But Japanese people just seem to be so utterly concerned with the idea of never missing a day of work that they much likely put their employees at maybe mortal risk of not getting home to not miss a day of work, rather than just say that day of work is off. Like, people could get colds and then not have to come to work for the next week, or not get home, and in the worst case, some people might die. But anything not to miss that day on the day until it's too late. That is the kind of thing I really don't like about Japan. And it happens quite often in those emergency situations, quite sadly. So now I've gone into that stuff, I'll do pitch accent, right? What is the timeline of when I did this? See, on September 19th last year is when I passed 1.0 CATS level in terms of my sentence cards with 7.5 thousand. The time that I finally went to Dogen's videos for Learn Japanese, which I now very much agree that people should do. It feels very guilty to me that it is basically the only academic sort of way I'm doing to learn things, and it feels bad that I actually have to rely on conscious knowledge to go into ability for once. When obviously conscious knowledge is not ability in itself, but it feels awkward to have to force it into me to learn it. But I will act quite positive, forward-thinking towards pitch accent for anyone that's worried. It's certainly not that I have it down now, but I do feel far better about it now. I'll go across some of the thoughts that I in fact put on Matt's Discord in the, my own accomplishments section, I can't remember what it was. That sort of thing that I posted at the time I was doing it. So, and just read off this picture of the post I made. Finally watching Dogen's stuff pitch accent for first time today, after 7k sentences. I did this halfway through August, so it was a bit before I had 7.5 sentences, so that's when I finally started actually looking at pitch accent. I thought maybe I should do it earlier, but I just didn't, because I kind of wanted to do it in Japanese at that point, but then when I realised I was going to do it for Dogen, I probably should have done it way earlier than I did. In fact, I might recommend people to do it as early as possible. Not sure if that's relevant, because, well, for one thing, you shouldn't try doing it if it's too hard to hear Japanese by itself, but it might make it easier if you just pick it up naturally early on, give you more opportunities to hear it. But, you know, that could be a point of argument, I think. Anyway, I'll continue. And there are a few things that make me feel a bit positive. Brackets, I'm only at part 9 so far, the type of writing that. I've been through it ages ago. For one, this rule for compounds, referred to as pattern 1 here, and has the latter part of the compound change its pitch accent, is entirely obvious to me as a possibility. It's probably one English speakers get easily, but the feeling of the word changing to add pitch, making the latter part seem like emphasis to me, compared to by itself, was something I was already thinking about and doing in my head when reading. I was worried about trying to notice pitch in the future with real-time Japanese, but with the Japanese in my ear from passive whilst watching, I managed to equate the pattern I already noticed with something common, like, I'm going to try and say it. Are you ready for bad Japanese? Tamini. I hate myself. I said that so badly. But you know what I was trying to say. But yeah, that goes up in that middle. I correctly guessed its pitch accent first time with a simple dictionary check. See, despite the fact that I didn't learn pitch accent till up to this point, somehow the information of it did actually remain in the back of my head from the library that I'd been building. I just didn't really know how to interpret it, and it became so much more obvious once it was explained to me. For some words this happened, not on a grand scale, but you can see how this is immediately something that makes you feel so much better about pitch accent when you learn a bit about the basics. I haven't explained pitch accent here, but I might go into a bit further more into some examples of how I feel about it once I get through a bit more of these notes. And yes, you might find it weird that I've been looking that way the entire video, but this is the thing you guys are used to if you watch the last one, even though the camera's there. And I will turn and look at it awkwardly like this, and it'll suddenly creep you out. But it's just that I could explain it, but I don't want to really. It's not exactly embarrassment, it's just a weird habit. And to this, apart from this pattern that I described of two words coming together, like Yamenobori. No, it's Yamenobori, sorry. Hopefully that was more correct. That's mean mountain climbing as a compound from a normalization of climb and mountain together, and where it connects there's pitch, which means sudden, which you'll notice far easily because it's sudden emphasis. And while this isn't the only pattern, this describes pattern 1, I thought it was very obvious as a way of sort of making the previous words into objectives while keeping clearly the last word as the main thing. It makes more sense in another example, which is Hakujin Donsu. I hate myself. Please do not bully me, Reddit. I know that I sound bad. It's not that I'm saying that sounds good. I know it sounds bad. Because I know I sound bad because I understand how Japanese people sound that much. I'm just bad at replicating it. And I'll discuss more about why that's a problem in a minute. But when I posted this, I mean, actually, there's another pattern where it just, the line just continues before it drops. So it's not the only pattern, but this made sense to me as possible. And I was like, oh, I get this. I totally get this. I didn't get told this. Awesome. Pitch accent isn't super hard. When I posted this, Matt even responded saying, cool, just ask any specific questions about pitch accent if you have any. And I immediately went, oh, thank you. I might get back to you on some things you mentioned before once I'm done. Not sure what done is, though, since this series is still updating. Probably just ends up being like studying grammar. So not sure how far to go. Because obviously I don't want to just imply too heavily on instinct rules told to me. I know it sounds a bit weird, but if you understand why I don't like grammar, it's kind of that. Because I'll rely on them too hard subconsciously, and then when something comes along that breaks them, I won't be able to deal with it as easily if I'm trying to stick to rules. And also, I did finish off this, and actually, is ongoing rest of the series is specifically pronunciation about specific sounds, and that is actually really helpful, but I haven't watched so much of that. That is really good if you want to learn specifically how to get accent better, so thank you, Dogen. Thank you. Matt replied to my last thing saying, how far you go is an interesting question. It is definitely possible to have a full conscious model of how pitch accent works, and I don't think it's unreasonable to go that far, but of course you can get a majority of the benefits just by learning the basic principles. I definitely agree with this. I actually think that from what I've experienced now, which I'll go into in a second, that I actually want to go and watch Dogen's series again, because I think I will better be able to take in the patterns, because once again, it's an example of now using it as a framework for what I've actually experienced, now that I can do it a bit more consciously, rather than making it my entire basis for viewing it. As I would like to put forward to people, if you use textbooks for grammar when learning a language, I think the correct way to do it is to add context to what you've already seen in your immersion, rather than use it as a basis to understand things, because the latter way around often leads to a lot of confusion and going, this hasn't been covered by this yet, this is too advanced for me, this is scary, sort of thing. Whereas if you're a bit more malleable, and it's more like, well, I've seen this or I haven't seen this, or like when I notice this, okay, I'll look it up now, and then you see it and go, oh, that just clicks, I get it, I've seen those situations, that makes more sense. But the other way around is a bit more hallowing, it's the right word, it's a bit more like having a lamp in the darkness, and then when you find something, you go, oh, I wasn't prepared for this at all. I'm sorry if that sounds mocking. I'm just trying to be light. Another time when I went through this was actually a continuation of this thought when I made a post in Matt's Discord on the same area of personal progress achievement. I can't remember what it's called. I'll let you go in I'll mention that after I go into pitch accent, things about Matt's Discord and what I'm doing currently in it. And near the start of September, I continued with another thing saying, I basically finished Dogan's video on pitch accent itself, but today I went back to continue his series, and I'm so glad immediately after there was an introduction on devoicing. Now this might sound incredibly grammar-worthy and boring, but I promise you this actually put my head to rest on some things that I found odd about Japanese that I could not explain. But it's the good kind of grammar where I go like, oh, that's how it works. That's why that existed. Thank God, I thought I was going insane. This is so important of a concept that subconscious knowledge of it is well why I kept thinking, I have to hear the word or I won't know how it's said. I mean, I think this is a good thing to think. I mean, you shouldn't just say words that you've never heard. That's part of the core thing I believe. But you understand what I mean when I continue. And even to the point where not being able to grasp a consciousness for this resulted in trying to use my own observations of my new pitch accent awareness to build theories around it, thinking pitch accent is my only war. And this is the point where I mentioned that devoicing is a part of Japanese pronunciation or intonation, but it's not pitch accent. So it's kind of an awkward thing of going like, oh, there's more things, but I think just understanding the concept and the general way this occurs, and some of the basic examples that you will totally get immediately. Totally. So I'll go into that in a minute. However, just the simple knowledge introduction also tells me that the dotted circles in the NHK accent info, which is the best way to look up pitch accent and intonation information, by the way. It's great. Also must be an indication of the presence of devoicing. It is. They're about like 3 different symbols relevant in that pronunciation information that exists on that NHK dictionary, which isn't part of the main part of the dictionaries that Matt originally introduced. You could download that separately. It's also in the AJATT materials now. It is the best. There's about 3 symbols. One of them is the line that indicates pitch. One of them is dotted line around mora, or just the characters, that indicates it is devoiced, which I'll continue to explain what that means. And another one which just includes a concept for a kind of sound that g noises make in Japanese that is a bit weird, that I haven't actually gone into myself. So I'm still progressing, It all goes forward, but everything's pretty positive actually. So far it seems to be at points other than the ending of a word. This could be wrong, so anyone that knows more or could tell me how to look up a legend for the Epwing would be appreciated. Someone did, and that's why the thing I'm talking about, someone did happily show me how to look up the Epwing for that. Because it's just instructions of how to use that specific dictionary and how to read it, and it was so nice. Thank you, that person. I don't like learning stuff in such a constructed way because I know knowledge will always be delivered in stages, and adherence to incomplete knowledge produces problems. I was much hounded in my own mind by the very misconception Dogan brings up in his video, but I just hadn't yet gained a set of knowledge to tackle it, much like what touching even a little pitch accent made me feel. I previously had to just accept the things I know as the things I know, and that's not too bad, but once you know there's patterns in it, consciousness can take over badly if you know it at all. The video is 33 in the series and even covers the exact type of words where I feel the correct way, where I either feel the correct way but don't know why, or notice that Japanese people are saying things in a way I could only simply conclude I can't. One of the examples that Okay, what devoicing is, I know I haven't really covered pitch out. Devoicing is when typically E sounds are shorter. E and other sounds, I can't remember what other vowel it is, but things at the end of that are typically shorter based on a certain number of rules. And a lot of things are like that. And some of the words I was worst at because I included those and I didn't know how to replicate that in my head. One of the simple examples of this is, well, dekiru, the verb for being able to do a thing. The past tense or complete tense, I mean, goes for both. I don't really ever know what the grammar forms, the grammar words for those tenses are, but I mean, I guess it means complete tense. Like we say dekta. No, dekta, I'm not saying it great. Dekta. You say it like that, you don't say dekita. That's the difference, right? You say dekta. And almost everyone that even watch anime will hear that and understand that, but not understand why. And that is devoicing. That is the problem you're having there. It's dekta, it's not dekita, it's dekta. The E sound between the second and last syllables is being shortened based on a habit of Japanese. So just so you know, that is a really good example, and that really helps. One of the other words that I have terrible indication with, and I'm going to go further into discussing an interesting thing about pitch accent in the future that people might not immediately get, especially people who maybe aren't doing this sort of learning might not get, is one of the words I'm worst at is actually a Japanese word for person. Hito. That's actually I probably did that wrong around then. It is a rising intonation, and also the reason why it's so hard for me is because the first syllable suffers from devoicing, meaning it's not hito, it's always hito. Like, it's always barely an E sound, and that always got me. One of the other things that always gets me is when the word, like, the kind of room is used in, suffix, like classroom is kyoshitsu. I'm terrible at saying it. I really know I'm terrible at saying it. But the thing is that she at the beginning of the bit that's actually the room part, that's devoiced. That's why it's so short and awkward for me. That's why I was so bad at it. When I finally understood that's why, I was like, oh, thank God, there's a reason. I'm just terrible. Because it's a different pattern for things. I was so happy. If you don't know about pitch accent, I'll go into that. It might seem like a weird point. Pitch accent, mainly in Japanese, runs by 4 different pitch patterns. Technically, only 3 of them are pitch patterns. The other one that is a pitch pattern doesn't technically have a pitch, and also the reason why it rises in intonation is actually a habit of Japanese intonation, it seems, or pronunciation, rather than pitch accent itself, because Japanese people describe that third one that is identified as having no pitch, which specifically refers to a high sound going into low sound. It doesn't have that, it only rises. It's specifically referred to as being flat by Japanese people, even though technically, by its pattern, the first mora, like a syllable, but not really, you learn the difference if you learn some pitch accent, is lower than the rest of them. The rest of them are high and to the same pitch, but the first bit is lower. This is a habit of Japanese intonation rather than pitch accent itself. So the word is technically flat, both because it doesn't have a pitch and because it's not really supposed to have any intonation at all. It's not technically that it does, it's just that Japanese people pronounce it that way. So it was awkward for me for ages when I saw Japanese people actively say, oh, it's flat. I'm like, it's not flat. There's nothing in Japanese that's flat. Screw you. And also that's the bit that foreigners are worst at identifying. There's a lot of things that have that. They start low and go high and stay high. The bits that people, English speakers, seemingly best at are the bits with pitch, because they involve something that is similar to emphasis, because it's easier to pick out in sounding. Even though the correct way of pronouncing them is not necessarily emphasis, it is pitch that matters. Emphasis does not matter. Emphasis can be created from pitch, but is not the thing you're aiming for. So that's why you may hear that if you're someone that's good at pitch accent, even if I seem like I'm doing pitch the correct way, it's most likely that I'm just doing that sort of emphasis. And there are indeed a number of patterns that I pull over from English that I really wish I didn't, and that I think is the real hard bit of learning another language. Not that Japanese is hard, so intonation becomes far harder if you already know a language. Um, but that may sound like a bit of like dropping too much of your head. So don't worry about it. If you just look into pitch accent, I'm sure you'll get it. I'm sure you'll get it. It won't be that you can necessarily hear everything and how you need to put everything together. The worst thing is that conjugations change how pitch accent works, and sometimes if you use a certain word that's not really a particle of speech, but it's used a kind of in-betweeny word, like my, meaning before. If you put a verb in front of that, the way you pronounce my depends on the pitch accent state of the word before it, and that's, well, if it's a verb. And that is annoying as hell, and I only know this because I know of an internet website where you can look up those patterns in a chart, and I was just like, oh, screw pitch, I quit. Right. However, the Moss form is the best. Like Moss form as a thing to start off with learning Japanese makes no sense, considering that like native speakers don't learn it until they get to school, because it's the really artificial point of language. It's only really taught to foreigners because they don't want people to start from speaking non-politely, which is more accurately more friendly, which feels like too much like you're pushing yourself on another person sort of thing, like you're obtruding too much in their personal space and becoming too friendly. Because for pitch accent's sake, as far as I can tell, this may not be correct. So please don't take this me as being your teacher, because I'm not here to teach. I'm here to, at best, teach you how to learn Japanese. Well, giving you the fish a day, I'm teaching you how to fish, if you consider me that important. But the Moss form for it, the pitch accent's the same. Every verb that goes into Moss form, the pitch accent becomes the same. It's low, then everything's high until Moss itself, which becomes the bit with the pitch on it, then goes low again. That's why everything's mas, not masu. Masu, like nothing's like that. Mas, and for masen, the see, I'm doing terrible amounts of emphasis, but you get it, right? You get it, right? Masen, the pitch is on the sen bit, but it's just the first mora is low, everything is high, and then goes down at either mas or sen. But that's it. That's mas form is really simple. It doesn't mean I can necessarily say it right, but understanding it is perfect. Understanding it's fine. I didn't necessarily just construct this video the best way, as you could probably tell. But I have got through more things in less time in previous things, but I do have some notes for certain things. Oh, one thing I'd like to discuss from things I now take in from what I do now. I did have a problem with audiobooks. I got over my problem with them. I mostly stopped doing novels and started doing things that aren't fiction, things that are non-fiction books. And actually the fact that Audible basically stopped being a useful route of audiobooks because how it changed its membership function. I actually switched to, I think it's just audiobook.jp, which is a very good website, and I actually enjoy how much they send me ads in the mail for this thing came out. Do you want to listen to it? Because that way it's far easier to find things. It honestly is. Even if it's just some motivating, like, this is how people work in the future. This is how the successful habits of whatever. And even if you want to like read Daigo books, because people love using Mentalist Daigo as like, can you listen to this guy? I can. I don't care if Daigo speaks fast. Like that's the point of my ability right now. Even if Daigo's speaking fast, I don't have a problem understanding what he's saying. It's fine. I watch tons of his videos. I should have made more of his videos in passive. But now my passive is pretty much only audiobooks. I haven't gone through too many so far. I've actually only gone from like 4. Like, it really took me a while to get through this. Another thing other than I've been doing is a thing that I didn't do before. I watched Japanese dubs of English shows, and oh my god, it is so perfect but yet so weird. I discovered that Friends on Netflix has a Japanese dub, and it's really good. Like, it's impersonation level good, to the point where my brain at several points went, I am watching something in Japanese, right? This isn't English, right? I had to remind myself that I was taking Japanese, to the point where I stopped watching Friends entirely because I thought it was such a good dub. However, it's not at all how Japanese people would speak. It's so good at replicating the American feeling at real working Japanese that it's funny and makes sense. Perfectly fine. But because of the culture clash, is not Japanese-like at all. But I've also made a point of, like, Breaking Bad also has a Japanese dub, guys. Still finding excuses not to immerse. you want to like procrastinate watching Breaking Bad like people used to do years ago. Just do it in Japanese. You can totally do it. You can totally do it. Recently I started watching Star Trek in Japanese, Deep Space Nine, and if anything, there's quite a lot of technical words I don't understand in that, but it doesn't bother me. My video cut off. You're welcome. Anyway, it's been a terrible cut for the people watching. But yeah, I can watch Star Trek. I mean, there's some technical words, but I understand most of it, and the technical words I don't understand don't bother me, because if I really needed them, I mean, they would feel normal. I mean, they feel like I've seen them before, and then I would get them. You know, it doesn't really matter. Although the problem is with those shows, it's that thing where the Netflix subtitles aren't the same words they're saying. It's like a approximated word. But dubs are totally a thing. But I haven't really done too much of that. I have watched a few other shows, a few other anime, things like that. But dubs are surprisingly interesting and very well produced. But it's just the level. It's so much of an imitation that it's just like, is this technically good Japanese learning? I'm not sure if it counts as technically good Japanese, so I have stopped at some things. But I'll probably watch more Star Trek, because I felt like it. I've not really watched Star Trek before. And again, I'm pretty much jumping off the point. I put notes on AJATT milestones. I started putting dates on for certain feelings I had for my progress. One of the things I included was, this was taken in the end of November of last year. I was starting reading Konosuba. Yeah, I did. No, I didn't do it. This God's blessing on this wonderful world, the novels. And honestly, actually, even though I was actually learning words from it, I still haven't finished the first one because, yay me. I really want to read more of them, but it just won't become a focus of my time now because I really want to focus towards stuff that is probably profitable. I mean, literally profitable, not like, oh, good results. I mean, give me money. But like, reading that as a light novel had become literally light novel. Light. It felt, I could read it as much as I could just read a manga. It was great. It's great having that sort of feeling. And in fact, I recorded on February of this year. In visual novels, I've got into an awkward habit of skipping sentences if I see no new words in them without actually reading them. This is a bad habit of actually knowing the words, because I'm not actually reading practice even then. I'm just skipping the sentences. So reading practice can sometimes not even be that, because I'm not stopping to read every word in my head. A similar thing has happened with books, where I need to slow myself down and make myself go through each word to process meaning, because sometimes I just think, I know all this, and accidentally don't bother to process it all. Because now I can very quickly understand when I don't already know words, so that I accidentally skip something. So like, oh, I won't learn anything from this, but then I'm just like, I just skipped my reading practice. Oops. So that was a funny thing that happened. This goes awkwardly back around to pitch accent, because I'm doing this video so well. January of this year, so a bit backwards. Can recognise some pitch accented words, mostly when they're by themselves. Can recognise in some instances of dialects that the way the words are being said, pitch accent, is different, but not enough to tell why. This occurred a few times. Mostly animal names are actually some of the best things to pick up a rising intonation of pitch accent. Like Uma. I put too much emphasis or length on it. I equate emphasis with length because of English, and I'm just doing it wrong. But like horse, Uma. Or like Uma, like I'm not doing it right. But when I heard it by itself as a single word rather than a whole sentence, it becomes far easier to pick out the pitch accent. And it probably doesn't sound amazing, but still progress. It's just like, but like Uma. If you put like again, I think it ends. Let me actually quickly look this up. Sorry, I'm actually pretty sure that's actually got a pitch on the end of it after the rising intonation. So. Well, that makes it easier to pick up. So, but there have been others that are just pitch accent 0 according to the dictionary. But like, let's see what horse is. right, horse has a pitch on second more understandable because it makes it easier. However, you can make. I was like, when I got that, I was like making fun of punch, like going, Uma, Uma, man, this chicken I got from the supermarket, Uma. I mean, apart from the fact that it was badly pronounced, I hope you got that joke. It's probably too old and too much of an English joke, but there was a problem a while ago where like supermarket like frozen ready-meal chicken was secretly horse meat. So you get it? Because horse, and also delicious. Uma. Uma. Oh, I make only myself laugh. I hate listening to myself speak. I don't think I want to get across a pitch accent, actually, because people might not get it. The people might get it because it's about saying words. The commodity of a word has little to do with the difficulty of them. Like watashi is still hard to me. I'm pretty sure I'm not getting it right there because that is a rising intonation. It doesn't matter that I've heard it a million times or anything that might make it worse because I might have inbuilt a pattern in my head for why it's that way instead of how it should be. But it's just hard. And like the one I want to say in my head that all dudes want to be saying in their head regardless of what I'm saying in their mind. It's just like order. I'm not good at it. Not good at it at all. At least like Boku is like merciful and could apparently be either way. I don't know if that particularly matters. But yeah, I don't want you to know that even if I say like, no, I can't say those words, and like someone else might be like, what do you mean you can't say those words? The words are really common. Like, yeah, but I know I can't. I mean, I could say those words. I can't say them right. Doesn't matter how common they are. How common they are has nothing to do with how difficult they are for foreigners to get right. And sometimes, like I won't even notice that a thing out a certain way till I got it. Like jitsuwa, is there's pitch on the tsu. Jitsuwa. And sometimes pitch accent does change on words depending on their meaning. This isn't actually very common, but I wanted to give an example of this. Taksan. Actually, I'm doing the wrong kind of pronunciation for Taksan. Taksan. I can't remember what the first one is. Sorry, let me just pull out the dictionary. I'm not super prepared. Everyone knows that word, right? Presumably everyone knows Taksan. And again, I'm doing the pronunciation I'm trying to do. Okay, it's just rising intonation. So for a lot, as Taksan is just Taksan, and it has devoicing on that ku sound, which is why it's Taksan, not Takusan. Get it? You guys all know it sounds like that, but now you know why. That's devoicing. Isn't it great? The pitch accent that changes here, don't worry, it's not a lot of things. I singled out this example because it actually changes depending on the definition of the word. The one that's a lot, the adverb that means a lot, is taksan. Taksan. I don't know if that's correct. But the one that means to have already had enough, that you can use as a nounal adjective, so the best way to put that in English. Or like, just, we've already had enough of this and no furthermore is needed. That use of taksan is taksan. It has a pitch on the sa. That's what you should aim for, and that's a really interesting point. I thought I really wanted to give an example of that just so people can understand the fun intricacies of both pitch accent and devoicing in an example. So thank you for listening to me on that. An interesting point is I can unfortunately now feel that I can be procrastinating even if I'm doing immersion, because I feel I can just be watching YouTube videos all day. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I don't get many sentences, because I can't really take sentences from YouTube videos. But I can be doing that and still get immersion, but technically not be making progress in most ways. I try to get a different mind about it, because after all, going to a lower level of difficulty of vocabulary can lead to better chances of picking up pitch accent that I wasn't picking up before. But also, it just means that I just won't progress in vocabulary. Um, before this would be because I couldn't get around trying to find something to usefully fill my listening time, but now it just feels like doing things just for fun is not actually accomplishing anything. So maybe I'm into the sad part of AJATT, but I'll still be doing things for fun. But like, I can definitely feel if I don't push myself, maybe I won't progress sort of level, or at least it'll be slow. The effectiveness of my productivity is now heavily influenced by whether or not I find some new interest. This is very pertinent. Sometimes I just like wasn't finding things to do that were interesting, and then like months ago I was like, hey, let's read books about trading stocks. I did that because I was like, oh, this seems interesting. Maybe I can get rich. I mean, everyone will think that. I mean, hopefully they think I'm too stupid for that. But like, I actually inversely got happy that I'm the kind of person that if I get interested in something, I can jump into it immediately and go, okay, how am I going to do this? I will read books. And like, maybe I won't do that in the future, but like I gained new knowledge of that, and that gave me more interest in what to do in the future and got me through some YouTube videos of the kind of things of, you know, mindsets of successful people. I know it sounds really snobby, and those videos kind of are, but I thought it was interesting at the time. If I don't have current interests, I flounder a bit, and this has definitely contributed to my sleep schedule becoming more lax, and that's why for a lot of last year, even if I managed to get listening practice, I definitely wanted to gain sentences, because I just couldn't find the motivation that was just like, I want to get up tomorrow to do that thing, because usually I just didn't have plans tomorrow. It was more like, oh, I've got to find something to watch. I think New Year's resolutions, I know it's a bit random, but this is notes from my notes now. I'm actually trying to get up at 6 a.m. every day. I failed this recently, and I didn't start immediately in the new year, but I thought it was a great habit to get used to, because if I get all my reviews out of the way at the beginning of the day, suddenly the rest of the day became so much easier. I mean, I usually did that, but sometimes it take me towards, like, until noon, sadly, and it's because I should be doing them and just them and not them and kind of watching a video, because that makes it take so much longer. But to get up 6 a.m. every day is pretty good. I got back into doing casual exercise in my room like before I did AJATT, because I was in okay shape, and now I'm just a bit so unfortunately that means a bit less time, but I'm still doing listening. I mean, I've got this in my ear. I mean, you can't see it. Got this in my ear. I'm still listening to the audiobooks while I'm doing some exercise. That's not really a loss. If anything, it's a good source of making me forcibly do nothing but listening. I thought I might start meditation, because I definitely did feel more that my stress had started to affect my progress and things. So I might start that soon. Maybe I'm not super excited about it now, because I've got too many things to try and learn in my now more limited time. It's maybe not enough thing that I thought about in saying this out loud, but let's read the notes for this next thing and go through it. It's relevant to AJATT too, but a habit that I need to kill in myself for everything is the laziness that emerges from this much is enough effort. I just need to aim for this and I win. It comes from having a method laid out to me by someone, and I usually need that because my own method is also hard to live by, because it has no proven effectiveness before I start. I need to become better at reminding and asking myself, what would the top person in this position do, and get more used to constantly creating my own new improvements. Like, time is open, this could be better, so let's research and test something. This came from the fact that I'm reading a lot more of personal development books, you know, self-improvement sort of things, and I really wanted to like try to make better use of the fact that I'm basically this lucky in getting to do this. But I have been unfortunately following the pattern of what that says, which is, I don't know, if I could just get my listening done today or whatever. Maybe that sort of thing, right? And it's exactly as what I said. Like, one of the reasons I can sell AJATT to people is because you don't need to think for yourself. I can describe the AJATT loop pretty much in 3 steps. You know, the loop for what you do in actions. In fact, I wouldn't have been able to do it if it wasn't so easily laid out to me. But now that I'm got the advantages of a new mindset and new skills that I honestly want to talk about in the future, like beliefs that I didn't even know I had that just emerge now that, well, I didn't have before, that just feel so obvious to me from doing this. The thing that Matt said about, or sometimes says about, how actually really getting good at something changes you, and you understand truly what it takes to get stuff done. I really believe that now, and I can really put forward certain things that I've learned. It doesn't even feel like hard things I've learned. It's just sort of natural to me now. So I'd like to discuss that in the future, as well as some other videos. It's become hard to add new words, both because newer words being rarer makes it harder to see value in them since they don't repeat, and because I've reached a point where I can sometimes just go long enough without having found a suitable sentence for a word I want that by the time I find one, I felt like I've learnt the word without a sentence card at all. This is important. This is a fact that Matt talked about. I can kind of learn Japanese now without having to make a sentence card. And it's not because I wanted to, it's because it just occurs before I get the opportunity to make a sentence card. So you can totally do that, I mean, at this sort of point. As a note, some of the former is evidently because I don't read a lot of novels, where the most dense and descriptive writing and settings would be. Most of the books I read are non-fiction, self-help books, etc., which use very frank speech, with a small mix of subject-specific vocabulary. Even the audiobooks I'm listening, they haven't been hard at all. Like, I understand most of them. Even when sometimes a word comes up in them, I haven't, like, say, bought the physical book so I can just take out the sentence. I just didn't bother. But I feel like I can still get a more understanding of what those words are, so it's not actually too bad. But to be fair, the audiobooks I'm listening to, it's not necessarily that easy, but I get them. There's not too much jargon, so it's not like, screw you, didn't load this before. It's just maybe some clauses. I don't really know how to describe it. Next point. It may be really weird to say, but because of doing more things like writing my ideas down. Okay, this is to do with the fact that since I've had to do work before, well, recently to get a job, so a lot of my time is actually involved. For the first time in a while, you may find this really weird, actually typing out English. I haven't done this for ages, really. I didn't really think about the fact that I hadn't done that for ages. Now I'm writing down my ideas in English. I've started having a notebook of ideas for the future in English that I thought was a really good idea. So I'm now doing a lot more thoughtful English production than I was doing. It's odd to say because likely most people watching this can't say the same, what with that sort of day-to-day being necessary, but I wasn't really doing any outside of the occasional Twitter rant or something, and even doing it now feels a bit guilty, both because I'm upping English use and also necessarily spending time away from focus on Japanese to do it. But I'm somewhat glad I'm using some English production just to focus on, improving things in more general ways. I'm sorry if that seems just a bit random, but this vlog is also to do with a bit about my life. I'm sorry if that seems a bit too a side point. Lately, it's like I can make up one-sided conversations in my head in Japanese, so making them come out of my mouth, especially at speed, without tripping over myself is difficult. Yeah, even reading things out loud, I just sometimes skip like a particle or something. It's really because my mouth is jumping ahead, but not doing it properly. So, yeah, that's something I mentioned. I have very recently finally started audiobooks. Yep, audiobook.jp, that's what it was. I've not been hard at all to understand. I'll also maybe put a link to the accent things I've been doing. The accent websites that I referred to for the charts that have examples of different groups of verbs being conjugated with pitch accent. Oh, it truly is traumatic to first look at. I'm not going to get back at it for a while. I'll probably go back to Dogen's videos with what I said about it better reinforcing now and me going, oh, no, I get that. Oh, I get that. And maybe that can help. So what else is there to say in this video? I'd like to say some community stuff. I mean, not because I want to diss the community or MIA community, but there is a reason that I now, for a little while, reduced my Patreon donation to Matt from the $10 needed to talk in his Discord group to just the one needed to look at it to use resources. I barely look at it all now, so I don't even notice the upcoming resources. Lately, people talk about Morph Man, and I haven't even watched like Matt's news videos at all. I just haven't been focusing on it at all. I'm not really interested in certain things. Maybe that's just because I haven't been bothered to look at it. So I just haven't looked at it at all, which is ultimately an advantage. But the reason why I stopped doing this is I'll talk about the history of Matt's Discord. Originally, just being a Patreon supporter, you could talk, which sounds really normal, right? So even if you just paid £1 or $1, that sort of thing, a month, you could speak in it. But this became way too much speaking, and you couldn't get people couldn't get the questions answered. There was too many people talking about random things that it clogged the chat. Eventually you just had to change it to £10, so only people really committed would bother, because it's just taking time away from them. They could just solve the problems themselves. So my nose is oddly itchy. It's the outside of my nose, not the inside of my nose. And what happened even then? What have I done? It happened even then that while less, people were still surprisingly willing to give $10 a month to ask questions they probably could get answered just from watching Matt's videos, which is odd because that would be why they were there in the first place. And he has done several Q&As since then, which would be helpful. I certainly can't blame people, because once the first time I did about 3-hour-long video of the entire journey of AJATT, I said, I asked him a question in the comments going, what do you think about this? I was like, I did watch the whole video, but then it's just like, you didn't, because I said it here. It's like, man, watching a 3-hour video is remembering all of it. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. I don't blame people who watch my video, or indeed maybe this video, now that it's getting this long, that they don't remember everything. It's fine. But the weird thing that occurred that really got me, I guess I have to say angry, was, I don't know, could I call it Dunning-Kruger syndrome? There was a surprising amount of, I might even be able to call them personalities, not because they're famous people or anything, but because they became sort of a personality in the chat. There were people that, despite not having finished Isaac, wanted to be the first people to give people advice about how to do sentences. And one of the things that makes this issue more complicated, apart from the fact that it means that they shouldn't really be the ones to give that information, is that sometimes people had left, with certain people left because there's too much of a one singular stream of this is how it should be done for people's taste, which I can certainly understand. One of the good things about it is you can discuss experimental methods for doing things. But the problem here was someone that hasn't really done much yet discussing their own specific method, when it's very clear that the person asking the question is trying to get closest to possible as what Matt thinks. The person with probably the most experience in that Discord. But it just gets hijacked by beginners promoting beginners with their own... Well, AJATT beginners. I'm not going to say that they can't be good or anything. But promoting basically their own ideas. And to the point where I got upset and I wanted to step in, because even though I wasn't fluent and I wasn't a moderator, I just wanted to be like, no guys, stop giving people... It's not that it's bad advice, it's that it's not this even incorrect advice. I would disagree with it, but it's not the advice they came to hear. They wanted to hear how to do AJATT, or MIA in this specific situation, according to what Matt thinks, in response to a question about how to do it from being inspired by him. And the response was quite often that the people who had the least experience, who wanted to promote something else, would reply first. To the point where I got very angry. Although I didn't butt in a lot. The time that I mostly butted in was to a guy who... He was quite reasonable, actually. He wanted to complain that Isaac was a bit of a crutch that could... it seemed a bit sucky. But I do think it is... Everyone really agreed that it was kind of the best thing to do now, but he thought that it was killing his enthusiasm for learning Japanese, and if he thought if you got to the sentence mining, everything would be fun. And I do have the mindset that if you cannot commit to getting through Isaac, you will not make it through the core part of AJATT or MIA, their type of immersion experience. Because I think that's kind of a test of how you can commit to doing something continuously. But if you don't find it fun, it could definitely sort of kill your interest, which I got. But the points that he made, I just heavily disagreed with. I could get them. I get the annoyance, but I just heavily disagree with them. I can't remember specifically about changing the wording, because it involved going directly from Japanese words as the word for the kanji, and I just didn't agree with this because it meant you'd have to do basically 2 jumps in learning the kanji rather than a single jump. And I thought it was far better to, as what is pretty normal, to learn the words from the kanji, not having to test a word that you don't necessarily know yet for a kanji. Another thing you put forward was that, you know, it was just basically, I don't believe anyone that still retains a high level of comprehension, according to Anki, of their cards past like 4 months. And I literally kind of snapped and just went, I have some cards that, and not even just because they're simple looking kanji, it's because my mnemonics have been that good. They're just 2 years or a year and a half, maybe at that point or something. And it's just like, no. And I haven't missed a day of reviews and everything. I slammed on him like that, even though he wasn't at all the worst person when it came to people just veering off the path and wanting to put that across. And I even said, I've never missed a day of reviews. It's still fact, like, very soon after that, because my poor sleeping habits, had missed a day of reviews for the first time ever and stopped even making much sentence progress. So, I mean, I don't want to get up on a high horse. I mean, I'm really sorry to that guy, but I also want to stop myself from making those sorts of arguments, so I left. The worst sort of people are the kind of people who just wanted to get in to say their opinion when it was wrong. There was one specific guy that I think everyone will know that says things like, oh, this is how I'm taking sentences, even though he hasn't finished Heisig. You can do whatever you want. Honestly, you can do whatever you want. But sometimes you would just say things that were just wrong, and and that's just an example of the kind of thing that's pretty forward, like, oh, this is how I'm getting sentences from, even though I haven't, not anywhere near finished Heisig. This is how I'm doing it. Like, I think this is good. It's like, you don't have enough experience to know whether that's good yet. You have to do it for a long time in that method before you can really say it's good, I think. But, like, he'll be the kind of person that would drop in with the worst things. Like, somebody was discussing, like, oh, I finally got the blending that happens in Japanese that gets rid of R sounds and, like, blends them into an like M, but it's because it's a nasally sound. One of the most common examples of this is wakana becoming wakana, and this would be very obvious to many people. This guy came in and chimed in with, those are actually 2 different words, they just happen to mean the same thing. Wakana is the negative form, whereas wakana is an e-adjective, slang, and like, it's not the same word, they just look the same, and it's just a thing Japanese people say. And it's just like, no, it's very obvious one's morphing to the other, it's a different version. And this guy did this multiple times for multiple different things, where as soon as someone called him out and said, like, I think that, no, that's wrong, like, he was sure on that, because this person has a surprising little experience. The time I was still in the chat, whereas I, like, 7k sentences, I'm not near where authority should be, but this guy hadn't finished Heisig, and he was saying things like this, and I think he has a Japanese girlfriend or something. I mean, might not even be a man, I'm just saying that, but, like, has a Japanese girlfriend. I think maybe, like, got that from her saying something that wasn't quite clear, and I immediately, as soon as said one of them's, you know, a negative conjugation, one of them's an e-adjective, went, this sounds like the way gshow.org would categorize this, because gshow.org has entries for words that are sayings themselves, like skatanai. I'm not saying it right. God damn it. But for words like that, and it categorizes them as e-adjectives because they're seeing it as one thing. That's not technically incorrect, because negative forms of verbs are technically e-adjectives, or at least conjugate like them, so it's not incorrect. However, phrasing them as like a hair difference seems like this person must have been taking that from Jisho, and that's what I immediately said. It was like, where are you getting this? I want to know where you're getting this to try and clear it up for everyone else, because I can't think of anything Jisho would do that. And he didn't say where this came from, or like, even if whether or not it was from Jisho, it's just like, I'm finished wasting my time, people just clearly don't get it, I'm not wasting my time, I need to get back to immersion. Like, as soon as you got criticism, it's like, no, it's wasting my time, I need to go back to immersion. To the point where one time he said something about what would maybe be an obvious conjugation of potential on a verb that's kind of then being used in past tense. I can't remember what it was, where he said the most amazing thing, where he said, oh no, that conjugation exists, and Matt himself appeared and said, have you ever seen it used like that? And he said, no, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You must understand from watching this video this far how much that is just ridiculous in terms of the core beliefs of learning a language through immersion. The idea that you should learn things from where they come from rather than like implicit knowledge or like applying grammar, to the which point where Matt had no choice but to post close to what would be like Lang 8 Japanese speaker level authority of multiple people saying, no, that sounds unnatural. But the guy just still wouldn't shift. And I understand that people that cannot like Matt, there's some videos that of course I think are a bit, I mean, it's not really, it's not rude isn't the right word, it's a bit coarse. Like this video on like combating the thought that AJATT is too hard at its core, and I actually think the script of that video is absolutely perfect. The only thing that's wrong with it is the tone in which he says it. Not the tone of the words, just the tone of his voice. Just sounds a bit too mocking. If that was just a bit more subtly toned, then it would be received far better by people who aren't currently into AJATT. I think that would have been a great opportunity. But he just came hard down at like criticizing that person's personality of just being like, oh no, it's really hard when, you know, you're just wrong, isn't it? You just can't admit it. I totally get it. People like that sort of posting and like going, yeah. I mean, I'm not the best at being a role model myself. It's not that I want to get down on that, but I can understand why people don't necessarily like Matt or are turned away by him. But in this situation, those sorts of things, not performed by Matt, but the people he's telling off, got really annoying. Just really annoying. The bunch of people doing Dunning-Kruger syndrome, and the very fear myself that I'm committing my own Dunning-Kruger syndrome and having to say they're wrong in order to try to protect people from coming in, wasting their money and getting the wrong ideas. Like, I had to watch a bunch of new people come in, and like including somebody that was finally coming into AJATT after 7 years of doing language wrong in their own opinion, and then come across things like that. I was like, no, stop! I need to protect these people from from bad ideas, because this is not what they came here to ask. They came here to ask what basically everyone thought was the most generally considered answer to this problem, not what just anyone there was going to say, especially someone that cannot like interact with most Japanese. It's not irrelevant. That's what really got upset me by being in that Discord, and it's not like Matt's fault or anything, so I feel pretty bad, but I left because I wanted to stop myself from getting involved in that, and I knew that me speaking up would also mean that other people would feel bad, including those people. And I just wanted to try and help people go in the right direction, but I've ultimately decided to basically ignore that. Now I know this video is just random in directionality, so I was cut off at that point after getting that out of my head. I mean, I can discuss some other experiences of Japanese experiences that I've had recently, actually. When I was out in town, so I'm immediately jumping off into another point of just coming to grips of how people interact with language again, and also like the reason why my glass went down is because my screensaver activated and I clicked again. I've already done that once in this recording. I went to town and I was waiting for the bus to go home, and I thought, are those three girls Japanese? And I thought you might think that's a really weird thing, because basically, oh-san, I'm doing it badly. Fucking old guy. I'm not old. I'm only about to turn 25, but I look pretty damn old, especially. And they were Japanese, like, foreign exchange students. I mean, they're probably here for a long time, but I was like, those Japanese girls. And then one of them said something, and I went, eh! In the loudest pitched, typical Japanese girl voice ever. I was like, oh my god, it's Japanese speakers in the flesh. I was so excited. Oh, that's a terrible thing to say, but like, I was like, oh. And they seemed to like not know which bus they needed to get on. But I ended up getting on my bus, going around the corner and going, I should have talked to them. It actually seemed like they were in trouble, so I it'd be like a nice opportunity to actually speak to a Japanese person for the first time. This is part of the reason why I want a Japanese conversational partner. But I was just trying to be a good Samaritan. So I actually got off at the next stop, wasting money, ran back to that bus station, found them still standing in front of the bus they needed to get on as it waited there for its departure time, because it doesn't mean it leaves as soon as it arrives. And I was like, is there something wrong? Like, these guys seemed like something wrong, because I could hear exactly every word that they said. Like, I'm... sort of thing. Oh, I hate my pronunciation. I could have done that pronunciation way better. But the kind of thing that happened was that I ended up totally helping them on which one they needed to be. I was like, oh, I don't really understand your language. You speak your own language is the problem. They speak fine English. I mean, intonation's a bit weird, but no, the girl I talked to speak pretty good English, I'm going to find the tweet in which I discussed this story, because I would do it this way. After I told this girl's Japanese. But I helped them. Yeah, I helped them. The conclusion to the story is this. Man who only knew they had a problem because he can understand them fixes the problem for them entirely through English conversation without any mention of Japanese. The problem was caused by knowing the correct number of bus, but doubting it because English town names are gloriously unobvious, even though they knew the name of the place they were going. It's just, it being spelt wasn't great. Screw English town names. But I just honestly didn't feel comfortable in saying Japanese, and I thought I would say it wrong, and I also thought, because the way I think in my head, that I wouldn't say it very respectfully, which is what I really worry about. So I was kind of way too nervous and went too fast, so that entire conversation happened without being clear at all that I understand Japanese and maybe could speak it if I tried to at that point. And so I accidentally made myself into a really boring superhero. Really boring with secret identity. Secretly understands Japanese man. Totally in my head I was thinking, saying something really stupid that I would immediately regret afterwards. Like going, oh, it's okay, English hot guys come to save you. But that sounds really creepy. That's really bad. It's really bad. I was just going to try and take the piss. But no, if I'd said that, it would have been bad. But that was a funny experience for me, because that was the first time I've interacted with Japanese people, as far as I'm aware, since I learned Japanese. And I helped them get on the bus. So I did. I didn't change the line or anything. That would have been a bit weird. But I thought I'd end the story on that because I managed to do an interaction with Japanese people. Entirely because I can understand Japanese, but without ever mentioning that I can understand Japanese. It was simple. It was it's just so lovely to hear it in the flesh. It was just like, people do really talk like this. Wow. And I'm just hearing natural Japanese. So nice. They talked over a bit, and I heard a bit of the conversation from the loudness of them going to certain things when they were talking. So I thought I'd end the story on a nice thing. Another thing I'd like to put in the future, as I'm getting more organised, and to the end of this video, it is only about the half of the length of the last video I made. Aren't you glad, people? And I'm dressed nicer, and my hair's down and actually clean, but because of the lighting in this room, I still look as dirty as before. So this was my first day of permanent part-time work. Might get fired later. Might not do well. Who knows? You get 1 month probation. My second video blog, and what I'd like to announce going forward is I'd actually like to make smaller videos, aren't you lucky, in the future, more discussing concepts I firmly believe now that I would like to succinctly get across to people, especially specific misunderstandings that people have about learning languages, and even specifically Japanese, where they overthink something that really shouldn't worry too much about. It's usually the kind of thing that I rant about on my Twitter, which I'm not really going to make public because my Twitter, it's kind of maybe a bit mean, and also it's an old Twitter. I want to make a new one for when I move forward. And actually, how I'm planning to move forward is I'll learn more programming, and then to make my programming public, to create more of a portfolio, I'll make my own blog about programming, update that, and then at the same time, I'll make my own language blog. It's not that I think I'm super special, but it's like my ranting can go somewhere in a more organised place than 12 tweets in a row that kill pacing. So I think that'd be really better and far more organised, and people could use that. I mean, it's not that I say I think I'm better than AJATT, and it's not that I think I'd be better than the upcoming MIA website, but I think more voices is good, and I think if it's good enough that I can get my thoughts out there and have more people promoting immersion based language learning, that it would be better for everyone, that everything more normal. And if I could just put all my thoughts there, it makes everything so much cleaner, and also make it easier to ask me questions. I think there will be video supplements of certain things I'd like to get across. I especially love to talk about the kind of beliefs I have now about how to get good at something, now that I've gotten pretty good at this one skill, even though I often like to point out, if it seems like I'm dissing traditional learners, it's only because I'm trying to get across like why I think my method is good. When I'm actually learning, it's not that I'm comparing myself at all. I'm only comparing myself to natives, because that's where I want to be. It doesn't matter if I'm above or below any other native English speaker or something. It's just, I want to get to natives, but a lot of people don't aim for that. And other than that, a simple thing I like to make is, you know, when you kind of imagine the perfect comeback afterwards, that sort of thing. I thought the perfect it's so bad, it's terrible to say like this, but the perfect comeback to that guy that was pretty good at Japanese and took Japanese 20 years ago in university. Because when he said my method was unusual, and I tried to play it down like, well, it's uncommon. It's like, oh, you've got some common, kind of awkward middle ground there. But actually, learning language for immersion is not at all uncommon. And that's a point I would really like to get across in the future. Because you may think it's uncommon, because you don't hear about it enough. But actually, for many, many reasons, it is not uncommon at all. It is one of the most well-used methods for learning languages. So thank you very much. I'm sorry if I haven't looked too nice, or maybe my stories might have ended up a bit too creepier than I was actually expecting from just, oh, that's the bus you want. You're welcome. And I'm sorry that the latter half, this is a bit less organised. This is where I am right now. I'm sorry if there were some awkward pauses, because after all, I'm not really editing this. In the future, maybe I will better edit videos, and everyone will be the better for it, and maybe I will not be recording them in my bedroom, my bed behind me. And I trust you. I've tried to make this sheet look nice, but it's just not working. It's just not working at all. Thank you once again, everyone, for watching this video. If you did, I hope you weren't disappointed in where I am. I hope you can understand where I'm coming from. If you may be a bit annoyed that I'm just not like, oh, I'm fluent at 18 months. It's a bit more realistic situation than that. But I am very happy with where I am, and I hope you can even see that I've also become better at making videos, even though it's basically my second one. Just everything went a bit more naturally, even though it was a bit less organised. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope this also at least just helps to make people aware that I still exist. I'm still going to make things in the future, and goes towards the great stockpile of everyone's AJATT vlogs for going like, oh, we all exist, we all learning like this. It's not that weird. I mean, I'm pretty weird. I mean, not everyone has as much free time as me. I can understand that. I may say some harsher things in the future. It's not that I'm trying to get down on people. It's like, I really need people to understand the context of where they need to be learning. I know I actually forgot to mention, I intended to be harsher in my original video. I tended to get down on people more, but actually the more as I did it, the more I thought to myself, that's just not quite right. I don't really want to get down on people. And in fact, the only real harsh bit of it, the tone I was speaking in grammar, I kind of regret that. I mean, I really wanted to nail the point down, but I didn't want to act like, you know, I'm doing this much work in studying, you guys aren't. It's not that sort of thing. I mean, there is a matter of acknowledging the scale of the thing in front of you. I think that's a thing that people don't do very well. But ultimately, I do want to get across that it's not about being special. It's not about being a better person or anything. It's not even about effort. In a lot of cases, it's not about effort. I wouldn't have got this far if it required a lot of effort or a lot of complex thinking. I promise you. Maybe now in the future I can be more independent going forward because of my new mindset towards things. But definitely it's not a matter of that. Putting effort in the wrong place can lead to different results. This should be understood. I think it's far more the method, and you deserve it. You deserve for your hard work to go towards the method that's going to get you where you want to be, and that's why I want to put forward this sort of thing, because to me it's like I live in a crazy box where this seems obvious to me, and where if I describe it to someone else, they go, really? Oh, my kanji is so hard. I'll never get past it, and stuff like that. And it's not like I want to make fun of those people, but they are used as a good example because that mindset isn't uncommon. And there are people that don't think like that, that also don't think they're getting the most out of what they're doing in their own method, or putting too much credit on things they really don't need to put credit onto. Put credit on yourself. Yourself is what really matters. You don't need textbooks. You could do things fairly automatically by themselves while just having fun. The only real factor is whether or not you choose to do that sort of method and the time involved. Naturally, the more time you put down at the beginning, the more you get over the hills of suckage. I don't mean that to put you down, I mean like the part where it's painful, and just get to the, oh, I'm having fun now. Because undoubtedly that part gets longer the less time you can put in just straight up time at the beginning. And anyway, this is rambling. Anyway, thank you everyone. This has been Japanese Gary Ben. I'm still alive. I'm still going to make videos. I want to make more in the future, discussing more normal things. I hope you're not too put down by this style of video if it gets a bit awkward. I'll try to get better at, say, video editing in the future if I can pour some resources into it after I get some more things sorted out. But please look forward to me hopefully making a blog sometime soon. I mean, based on the way things go, it might end up being a bit later into the year, but I'm certainly going to probably do it before I get into going into JET if I make it. And if I do go to JET, I will include videos about that sort of thing, even though it may not be super pertinent to this sort of audience. I think some people find it interesting, and definitely a good way for more people to see this sort of method and see how, you know, people taking JET can be doing this sort of thing. I want to use that as a get in for people, and maybe, you know, some having fun in Japan when I get there sort of things that might happen. I don't want to make it too much of a casual fun channel, but I do want to. I'd best use that as an opportunity to promote thinking this sort of way. So yeah, going forward, more videos hopefully. Organising my thoughts in a blog after I've gotten some other things sorted out. And generally, I've got some things ahead of me. I hope that I'm far better at pitch accent by the time I get to Japan. Or others would just be like, I can listen, but I can't speak, and they probably won't believe that until they can speak well. It's understandable. Okay, so, Japanese Gary Ben. According to a previous comment, my name might sound like an unfortunate thing to do with the toilet to Japanese people, but that's okay, my audience isn't Japanese people. And I just remembered something that I could have said harshly about something I got, when I made the story about something I got upset about. And I'm actually kind of proud that I forgot, because I don't want to do it. Although it did involve me mentally shouting, "Nameten jane zo ahoga!" Oh, it's probably terrible Japanese, I'm so sorry. Bye guys.